All right, guys, what's going on? Welcome back to the Everything College Football Podcast. Today, me and Nick here doing a preview and prediction for Week 11 contest in the SEC between LSU and Alabama. Crimson Tide 10-point favorites, 49.5 is the total, 7:30 p.m. Eastern Time on ABC from Tuscaloosa. Getting things started with the Tigers' offense on that Crimson Tide defense. Obviously, it's been a week of headlines for LSU as this team just fresh off firing Brian Kelly. Offensive coordinator Joe Salone's out as well. New leadership is in for the Tigers, Nick, and I think that's actually going to lead to them playing better football because I think now, when you look at Brian Kelly, right, I swear he would always have this look of just anger and disappointment, and I'm sick of coaching this team, and I think that resonated in the locker room in certainly a negative way, and the results have been pretty poor for what is a phenomenal roster. You could argue top 5 in the country, right? Now they're going to be playing more stress-free, free-flowing football, and I think that's going to lead to a lot better results. LSU, they're going to turn to Alex Atkins as the offensive coordinator. This guy was at FSU for a couple of years and was pretty successful. Got fired last year because Coach Norvell brought in zero talent and they did nothing. He's got talent to work with, Nick, and I still think this guy's a pretty good coordinator. Garrett Nussmeier has not been playing his best football up until this point. He's been inaccurate, has made some bad decisions. Still a big-armed quarterback that's going to be thrown to the likes of guys like Aaron Anderson, a phenomenal slot receiver. Barry and Brown's been involved, showcasing strong hands and some improved route running along with his great speed. Xavier Thomas is a Swiss Army knife. You have a beast of a tight end in Trey'Dez Green, who's a monster in the red zone. Kyle Parker and Bauer Sharp as well, and even Nick Anderson. Nick, I mean, those are 7 guys deep in this receiving group, going up against an Alabama secondary that's not been great, but it hasn't been awful either. They've been prone to allowing some big plays. Damani Jackson has really struggled for them in coverage. I think the safeties of Keon Sabb and Bray Hubbard have helped limit a lot of damage this year. But it's a secondary that you can look to attack for LSU, and I think they're going to look to air things out, Nick, and I expect them to have one of their better showings this year when it comes to throwing the football downfield. That's just a hunch, right? I could be completely wrong, but I feel like with these guys out of the picture now, they're going to play a lot better.
It's certainly an interesting matchup here. LSU, obviously, things went totally wrong in the Brian Kelly era, and it came to a swift end. Unfortunately, as an Alabama fan, I was kind of hoping he would still be in a job at this point because they were a complete dysfunctional train wreck, and Joe Sloan was a horrible offensive coordinator who was really unable to get anything out of the talent he has at his disposal in Baton Rouge. Obviously, big things coming for LSU in terms of the next coach they're going to hire. Certainly intrigued to see what direction they go. But as for this game, I do agree. I think there's an opportunity for their offense to have a better day. 25.5 points per game was obviously not getting the job done for LSU. That's just not a good enough number for an offense that had a guy in Garrett Nussmeier who was supposed to be a Heisman Trophy favorite at the start of the season, who has not particularly lived up to that high standard that he set for himself. Nussmeier just hasn't really looked the part. 66% comp rate, 800 yards passing, 12 touchdowns, 5 picks. Yeah, those are probably good stats if you're on like a MAC team or a low-end Power 4 team, but not on LSU, not when you were a Heisman favorite in the preseason. It's just not been good enough. He's not been accurate. He's really struggled with the deep ball. He's struggled to really uncork it, and you haven't seen enough production out of the receivers that you were hoping for. It's a very talented bunch, right? Aaron Anderson, Barry, and Brown. These are 2 really talented guys, just about 300 yards, 350 yards for each of them, but the numbers, yards per grab, right? 13.2 for Anderson, no touchdowns, 10 yards per grab, and only 1 score for Barry and Brown. Not great. Trey'Dez Green has been really solid as a tight end, 265 and 4 scores, but he's really been the shining guy in terms of that production. Xavier Thomas, 265 and 3 scores, but again, low yards per grab here. They're the highest yards per reception is Thomas at 13.4, so they're really struggling to get downfield. I think that's a big thing when you look at it. And it's very evident, right? 5.59 yards per play is not good enough for this offense either. They've just been completely poor across the board. They're not been able to figure it out here. And now they face an Alabama team where there are potential opportunities to attack a secondary that's looked a little weak at times. 18.3 points per game for the Bama defense. Pretty good number, right? Overall, 5.27 yards per play. 8 interceptions to 7 pass touchdowns given up and 1,300 yards passing. Total allowed by this unit. Some of the corners are a little iffy. Damani Jackson has not been phenomenal. Keon Sabb has been questionable at times. Some other pieces, Kirkpatrick Jr. found himself some legal trouble this past weekend, so unlikely that he is going to be playing in this game as he's got some issues. Xavier Brown, he had the big pick 6 against Tennessee, but he still needs to certainly improve some of his game. Bray Hubbard has been a great piece in the secondary and clearly a leader with 3 interceptions and the 4 pass breakups, 44 total tackles, but I'm curious to see if other pieces can step up here. There's a lot of different weapons. If they're firing on all cylinders, it may be a tough night for the Tide defense.
Dejon Lee has stepped in as a starting corner the last couple of weeks, and he's played pretty good football for them. We'll see if that can continue here against LSU. The biggest weakness for the Bama defense is their run defense. This is a team in conference play allowing 5.2 yards per carry. That's dead last in the entire conference. And it was a tough month for them. You know, at times they've showed success, especially in short yardage. They're very good when it comes to that, right? But limiting explosive plays and just overall effectiveness on the ground has been tough for them. This is a team that's really disappointing because they do have a lot of talent on the defensive line, led by Tim Keenan. You have great edge rushers, LT Overton, Yanze Pierre. A little bit more inconsistent than you would like to see for a team that wants to contend for a national title, but those are going to be your top playmakers. For LSU, this is a team that I'm not sure if they can take advantage of that weakness because they've just been awful at running the football the last 2 years now. It was Sloan out of the picture. Maybe they can do something, but over the last 2 years, Nick, the only game they had of 200-plus yards was last year against South Alabama. Since then, they've not had one, and they've been pretty bad in conference play. At times, they can get things going, generating push. They can rip off an explosive every here and again. But for the most part, this has just not been a good part for this football team. Caden Durham, a very powerful back, a nice dual threat guy. Harlan Berry's given them a spark at times. I don't know how they're really going to fix things for this run game, especially with left tackle being really questionable. Tyree Adams is out. Karis Kearney, a five-star who is in place of him, is also questionable. On the interior, they've really underperformed. Center Braylon Moore has been great. DJ Chester, we'll see what they do with him. He's been playing a little bit this year, trying to get back from injury. Hopefully he'll be available. But Weston Davis at right tackle has been awful. I mean, one of the worst in the conference. And then Josh Thompson at right guard has been respected. I mean, this is just not that good of an offensive line collectively. I don't know how much can change, in 2 weeks. But hopeful for the best, I guess. But that's the weakness, Nick. Try to attack them on the ground. I don't know if else you can.
Yeah, LSU certainly have to try and find a way to attack on the ground. They've been unable to do so. This has been a bad rushing attack, right? There's no other way to put it. We wondered what that would look like in the preseason. We figured if there was going to be something holding back this team, it would be a rushing attack that was poor. 3.78 yards per attempt on the ground, not good enough. 8 rushing touchdowns, not good enough. Caden Durham's the only guy who's really showing up on the ground, and even then, he's not particularly having a phenomenal season like I thought he might potentially have. 378, 4.8, and 2 scores, about 50 yards per game. Harlan Berry's been okay, but not good enough. 225 yards on the ground and 2 scores. This rushing attack is just poor. The offensive line is weak here, and this could be a big get-right opportunity for Alabama that looked a little bit better the past couple of weeks. They looked okay against South Carolina. Certainly in that second half, they were a little bit better at times against the run, but still a unit that needs to continue to improve throughout the season. 4.5 yards per attempt given up on the season, 11 rushing touchdowns for this team. A lot of these guys got to step up here. Obviously a lot of positive things from Justin Jefferson, Deontay Lawson. Both of those guys have been solid. Yanze Pierre has been phenomenal. He's been really a big key guy getting pressure in the backfield. 29 total tackles, 7.5 tackles for loss, 4 sacks for him. Nikai Hill-Green, LT Overton have both been really productive. Keon Keeley finally heard his name. He got the game-sealing sack against South Carolina and Columbia. The last time the Tide played, finally heard his name. The former 5-star has not really been doing anything. Good to see him finally getting himself 1.5 sacks in that game, getting some pressure on the quarterback. Curious to see if they find a way to get him more involved because he is a talented player that's just not living up to it. James Smith has been solid for this team as well. This could be a big opportunity for Alabama to stuff the run, be productive in the backfield, and put a lot of pressure on Nussmeier. If you can rough Nussmeier up early, make him uncomfortable, he'll be inaccurate. He'll turn the ball over, put the ball into harm's way, and that could certainly bode well for an Alabama defense that has really been solid in keeping the turnover margin quite high. As a team, the turnover margin has been really strong for Alabama, and that has gone a long way in helping them win some of these closer games.
Moving to the other side of things, the Bama offense on that Tiger defense for the Crimson Tide. This is a group that seemingly has been very consistent when throwing the football. 273 yards per game from their quarterback, Ty Simpson, also completing 68%, 20 touchdowns, pretty much no interceptions on the year. Biggest problem is this is a team that I wonder what they'll do if their passing game is not as strong on a weekly basis. You saw it against South Carolina where they're able to barely escape in Columbia. Well, the passing game was not that good. Ty Simpson, 56% comp rate, missed some throws downfield that could have led to big opportunities. So they were still available, right, but the quarterback was not able to put it on them. And it potentially could have costed them the game. He still had 253, 2 touchdowns, and he's been very strong. And these guys are incredibly tough to defend in the intermediate to deep passing game. Just because the concepts have been there for these guys to attack his own coverage. The quarterback has been incredibly accurate when it comes to his anticipation and his football IQ. Gurmy Bernard, Ryan Williams, some good production. 495 for Williams, 526 for Bernard. Isaiah Horton's been really molding into a nice number 3 for him. Josh Cuevas is a respectable tight end. A couple of other guys like Rico Scott has been catching passes as well. But this team is just so tough to get off the field, Nick. They've been so good on third down, 50% exactly on the year. The biggest problem for me, Nick, is I just feel like one day they're going to have games like this where their quarterback completes about 50 to 60%. They go 30% on third down. And that's going to cause them to lose football games because this is realistically not very, able to be consistent in that regard, right? Over a long period of time. And I don't think it's going to happen here potentially, but I think in the CFP, that's something that could work on them. So Bama needs to establish more balance, and it starts with finding something on the ground. I talk about the run defense being poor. The rushing attack is just as weak. It's one of the worst in the conference. They've really struggled to generate much. They've only had one game of 150 plus yards this year is against ULM. They're not efficient in that regard either, Nick, and I think that's definitely been a problem, and I think it could certainly cause some issues in LSU. This is a team that's incredibly loaded on defense. I know they've had their struggles. A&M really torched them apart. They were able to create some turnovers that made that game a little bit closer in the first half. They had a lead at the end of the first half because of the defense making some plays against Vanderbilt. They couldn't slow down that run game. Ole Miss was really starting to attack them down the field. They were also on the field for almost 90 plays in that game. So some of the struggles they've had on defense, I think, are a tad overblown. The secondary's had some elite players this year. Mansour Delane at corner, AJ Halsey at safety. These guys have been tremendous. They've boosted their draft stock tremendously. I think you also have other guys in the back end that are playmakers like PJ Woodland. And then Deshaun Spears has been pretty good this year. Still have nice edge rushers for what's been a really good run defense. If the theme's going to be right, like I'm expecting, they're going to be better in all regards after the firing of their coaches, Nick. The defense is going to play a lights out game here, and Alabama's going to have to find more ways to be successful.
Alabama will certainly have to find more balance if they have dreams of competing for a national title and winning a national title. I think they certainly know that. In Tuscaloosa, this is an offense that's been really good, but there are still some concerns. 34.4 points per game is a really strong number. 2,300 yards total passing for this team, about 6 yards per play, but 3.63 yards per attempt on the ground. I'll get to that in a second here. I think the biggest key for this offense is the fact that they've been very efficient on third and fourth down, 50% on third down, 65% on fourth down, and a 97.06 red zone success rate, so 33 of 34 in the red zone getting points. That's really key, especially when you have a kicker that's a little bit dodgy there. With Connor Talty, it's really good to cash in. You saw that against South Carolina where Ty Simpson completed a really key throw on fourth down in the red zone and converted a touchdown. Also had a good third down conversion on that same drive. Ty Simpson has been phenomenal. Probably the number 2 in the Heisman race for me, right behind Fernando Mendoza. I think he's been incredible. Ty Simpson has been as advertised and has really stepped up and looks comfortable and confident. Even when things are not going exactly his way in South Carolina, he's still cool, calm, and composed to get the job done and lead the Crimson Tide to a victory. 68% comp rate, 2,100 yards passing, nearly 2,200 yards on the season, 20 touchdowns and 1 interception. Also can certainly use his legs and get that offense part involved as well. The passing attack has a lot of key pieces. Jeremy Bernard, Ryan Williams, you know about them. They've both been phenomenal this season. But Latavier Brooks has stepped up. Isaiah Horton has been really good. Josh Cuevas, the tight end, has certainly been a guy they want to target in the red zone. Rico Scott and Daniel Hill out of the backfield. Rico Scott, the wide receiver, been involved as well. The rushing attack is just the problem, right? They just can't seem to find that consistency on the ground. 3.63 yards per attempt is not good enough. They had some success against South Carolina, but not enough. Jam Miller still hasn't quite found himself fully comfortable. Maybe this is a game for him to try to have a solid day on the ground. 308 yards for him, about 4 yards per attempt, 2 scores. Kevin Riley, A.K. Deere, both have some yards. So does Daniel Hill, but this has not been good enough. And now you're looking at an LSU run defense that might be the only positive for this defense. 3.92 yards per attempt given up, 18.9 points per game, 5 yards per play roughly given up. There's a lot of talented pieces on this LSU defense. Halsey has been really good in the back end, 6'3" total tackles, 3 pass breakups. He's been a key piece here. Jack Pyburn has looked good, coming off the edge for this team, 34 total tackles, 3.5 TFLs, 1.5 sacks. I think the biggest success is, who can run the ball better here. If one of these teams can have a significant advantage running the ball, they'll be the one that ultimately wins this game and pulls and looks good doing it here. If Alabama can find that consistency, relieve some of that pressure on Ty Simpson, move the ball on the ground, and have a strong day running the ball, that could be a big win for Alabama.
Now, one big thing I'm circling for LSU's defense is 4 weeks in a row, they've not been great on third down. They've also played legitimate dual threat quarterbacks in all of those games. They had clean hits on Pavia all day long. They just could not, slow things down because those edge rushers were so free to lay a hit on him that they could not slow down. And Pavia would, he's got some magic to him, and he was able to avoid a lot of sacks. But they're scheming up some nice blitzes, Nick, and they're not playing exactly a dual threat quarterback. I know Simpson's got some respectable wheels, but he's not going to be able to break free like these other quarterbacks were. And I think for LSU, that's going to be a big beneficiary. It's going to lead to them getting off the field a lot more in this game. Guys like Harold Perkins, Patrick Payton, going up against a tough offensive line. Been shaky at times in pass pro, but for the most part, they've been very solid. But that's a big key for me, Nick, because they've played all these dual threat quarterbacks that have just been burning them on third down with their legs, and Simpson's not exactly going to be able to do that. In the last 2 years, we picked easy victories for Alabama. Why? Because we said Jalen Milroe was going to torch this LSU defense. It was easy. We watched the tape. We knew it was going to happen. That's exactly what Jalen Milroe did. He's not there anymore, Nick. So if there's one positive potentially for LSU in this game, it's everything I just talked about.
Jalen Moe had a lot of faults while at Alabama, but one of those faults that you could certainly not say couldn't blame him against LSU because he had dominant days both years, and it was you could see it from a mile away that he was going to attack that defense and put them in a headlock, and he did it over and over again. Ty Simpson can't quite move like Jalen Milroe, but I think he showed some promise in dodging some of the pressure. I think Missouri, certainly the game film was interesting in that matchup. Missouri got a lot of pressure on him. They had success. They forced a fumble. They got some sacks, but he was also able to get away and dodge some of those opportunities. South Carolina had some success putting some pressure on him as well here. If they can find a way to balance that fine line, have a day between what they did against Missouri and what they did against South Carolina, I think Alabama will be just fine. But that is the thing I'm keeping an eye on. What does that third down pressure look like? What does the blitz rate look like from this LSU defense?
Now move to the final thoughts and the prediction. For LSU, I feel like everything we just saw from the last couple weeks, you can just throw it in the trash because now you have a new head coach in Frank Wilson, the interim, who's really going to rally the troops, and I think these guys are going to be amped up to play football again. Or against Texas A&M in that second half, I texted you, Nick. I was like, these guys look like they quit. They had tough losses against Ole Miss and Vanderbilt as well. And I really think that's going to be a big factor, right? As the locker room's going to start getting back together. They're going to be excited to play football again. And this talented roster is going to be able to go out there and compete. And they've not been awful in Tuscaloosa, really, the last couple of trips. I think they had one victory and then a couple of losses, but they're not getting blown out per se as much as they do at home, shockingly enough. And I think this Alabama team being incredibly one-dimensional on offense, going up against the run defense that's going to bounce back, generate some pressure up front. They're going to be able to get off the field a little bit more. And sometimes with this Alabama pass game, it just seems like they cap out and they don't grow like they should. I mean, Ty Simpson had the exact same pass numbers 2 weeks in a row, really. So I don't know how much success the Alabama offense will have. Of course, they had a bye week themselves. And we could be completely wrong. LSU could come out here and look awful, but I feel like this is a team, again, is going to be amped up to play football. They're going to start to match talent with production. I think that could be certainly scary for Alabama. This is not going to be a pushover at all. I think the Tide at home will eventually get the job done. But LSU could absolutely come in here and make this a ball game, Nick, and I think we're in for a good one in primetime Saturday night.
Yeah, I certainly think LSU can come in and make this a ball game. This is a weird rivalry where the road team seems to do better than the home team. Alabama's had a ton of success in Baton Rouge, and LSU, like you alluded to there, they had two close one-score losses, and then they had the win in 2019, the last three trips there. So they played good football the last couple of times, and that 2021 team was not very good at all, and they gave Alabama a fight, and they put Alabama in a tough spot there. Alabama was doing some injuries that season, but still, they made that a contest. It came down to the wire in what was ultimately a great game at Bryant-Denny Stadium. I think this will be a great game again here. I really look at this as an opportunity for Alabama to prove that they're a top team in the country. If they go out here and absolutely smash LSU, I think that cements them as the number 4 team in the country and one of the top teams and the best one-loss team in the country. Right? We've seen Alabama lose games to teams that were inferior opponents, but teams that had way worse rosters than this LSU team. The Vanderbilt team last year had a worse roster than this LSU team. The Oklahoma team last year had a worse roster than this LSU team. Florida State has a worse roster than LSU has right now. Right? So Alabama's lost to teams with inferior rosters than what LSU has. I know they've been through a lot of turmoil, but maybe that, relieving that pressure, Brian Kelly being gone, could certainly help things out for LSU. This will be a dogfight. There's certainly no sugarcoating that here, but if Alabama wins this game by 20 plus, I think they're certainly in the upper tier of contenders in the national championship race at this moment in time. I think they're the top one-loss team in the country right now. But if they go out here and absolutely beat the brakes off LSU, that just further cements it, and that puts them really right on the heels of Texas A&M, Indiana, and Ohio State. Those three teams, I think, have kind of pulled themselves clear of the field as we enter into November right now. This is a big game. There's big stakes here. Obviously, LSU is simply playing for pride at this point. Alabama's playing to put themselves in a good spot and continue building momentum towards potential SEC championship and a national championship. A very key game going down in prime time at Bryant-Denny Stadium. A very intriguing contest. I'm sure a lot of people will tune in to see what happens in what is a great rivalry in the SEC.
Playing not just for pride, but a chance to play spoiler as well in this conference. They still have a lot of tough games remaining, so LSU looking to accomplish that on Saturday. That's it for today's episode. Make sure you guys like, comment, subscribe. See you next time.